Okay, so this critique is for a commentary by the Storybox. It's a defense of Erika Kirk against some pretty intense conspiracy theories from Candace Owens about Charlie Kirk, parenting, and even Scientology. Let's dive right in. First up is tone and credibility. The core idea here is that a defense is, well, often undermined when your valid points get buried under too many personal insults.
That is the absolute headline issue. I mean, I went through the source material, and the list of names the narrator calls Candace Owens it's a lot.
It's pretty aggressive.
It is. We've got psychopath, dingbat narcissist, demonic evil witch, sicko, snake, and then just dingbat over and over again.
So it's high octane for sure. But the real question is it actually working?
Well, no. And here's why. When you're listening to someone who is clearly that angry, it signals a lack of emotional control.
Right.
So if you're a neutral listener, someone who maybe doesn't even know the backstory, it doesn't sound like an objective analysis. It sounds like a vendetta.
A personal fight.
Exactly. The second you hear, "You dingbat, you don't know a thing," the listener's brain sort of switches off from learning mode and goes straight into conflict mode.
And they stop hearing the facts. They just hear the fight.
They just hear the drama, and you risk them tuning out your actual factual corrections because they're just overwhelmed by all that vitriol.
Yeah, if your whole argument is my opponent is irrational and I'm the same one, you can't really sound just as unhinged as the person you're critiquing.
You can't. You surrender the moral high ground the moment you start name-calling.
Okay, so the suggestion then is to strip out those character attacks and replace them with cold facts.
Cold fact.
Because they create a much sharper contrast between her behavior and the narrator's rationality.
Right. Cold facts burn longer than hot anger.
They do.
Let's take a concrete example from the text. So, on the child's sleep schedule, the narrator says, "You dingbat, you don't know a thing about being a parent. Toddlers wake up at 2:45 a.m. Good grief, what sort of kids are you raising, you dingbat?"
It's very visceral, but it's messy. You know, it attacks her as a person, not her argument.
Right. So a much stronger version would be to just strip out the insult completely and lean into the science.
So what would that sound like?
Something like, "The claim that toddlers don't wake at 2:45 a.m. contradicts standard pediatric knowledge on sleep regression and grief. It is biologically normal for a 3-year-old to wake during the night."
On this topic. One is just an opinion. The other is a verifiable stance. It makes the opponent look anti-science.
And makes the narrator look like the expert.
Precisely.
So what about that other big one, where the narrator calls her a demonic witch for bringing the kids into it?
Another perfect spot for a pivot. Instead of just flinging mud, frame it as an ethical line being crossed.
Okay.
You could say, bringing minor children into a conspiracy theory crosses a universally accepted ethical line in political commentary. It's not just inaccurate, it's a violation of privacy standards that most responsible broadcasters adhere to.
That hits way harder. It positions the narrator as the adult in the room.
Yes.
It frames the opponent's behavior not just as subjectively evil, but as objectively unprofessional.
And that's a position of power. You're holding them to a standard, not just shouting into the void.
Okay, let's move on. Our second big area of critique is structure and flow. The main issue, disorganized, repetitive loops of outrage just dilute the strength of your actual evidence.
This was, for me, the biggest struggle in reviewing the material. The commentary jumps frantically between topics.
It's all over the place.
It really is. We start with the 2:45 a.m. sleep thing, then we swerve into insults about being rich enough to have help, then suddenly we're on to Scientology claims with this guy John Min.
And then back to a PR retainer, and then more insults.
Right. It feels like whiplash. It feels more like a stream of consciousness rant than a constructed argument.
Yeah, and you see the same phrases repeated, like, "she doesn't care," over and over between the actual points. The listener just loses the thread.
You do. By the time you get to the important part about the photo on the floor, you're already exhausted from being bounced around.
So the core argument is that the opponent is hypocritical and inaccurate. To prove that, you have to organize the chaos.
You do.
So the suggestion is to group the rebuttals into distinct chapters of evidence. That way, you're building a cumulative case.
Chapters of evidence. I really like that framing. It implies you're taking the listener on a journey, not just running them in circles.
Exactly. You're arranging your shots for maximum impact, not just firing them off as they pop into your head.
So let's walk through that. What would these chapters actually look like?
I think you start with Chapter 1, the parenting claims.
So keep it focused just on the domestic stuff.
Just on that. Handle the 2:45 a.m. point, the Gigi sleeping in the bed argument, all in one focus block. You address the REM sleep era scientifically right there.
Okay, so no Scientology yet. No money.
Not yet. Just completely dismantle the parenting criticism using those pediatric facts we talked about. It tells the listener, first, we are going to clear the mother's name on her parenting.
Okay, so you establish that credibility first. Then what?
Then you move to chapter 2, the Scientology and financial contradictions.
This is where the hypocrisy comes in.
This is where it all comes together. All the talk of John Min, the third eye allegations, the PR retainer request, they all relate to hypocrisy and money.
Grouping them together like that.
It highlights the contradiction, calling Charlie Kirk a Scientologist while it seems being backed by one.
That's a really smart connection, but it gets totally lost in the current draft. It's separated by like 3 minutes of yelling.
Right. If you isolate it in a hypocrisy chapter, that irony becomes so much sharper.
And then the third chapter?
Chapter 3, the photo incident.
Why save that one for last? It's kind of buried in the middle right now.
Because it's your emotional climax. It's the most humanizing part of the entire piece. You save the analysis of the photo on the floor for the end, after you've already proven the opponent is factually and financially compromised.
So you end on empathy, not anger?
Exactly. It's a journey for the listener. First, this is factually wrong. That's science. Second, this is hypocritical. That's money. And third, this is morally cruel. That's the child.
That's a powerful, devastating structure.
It builds a case that's almost impossible to ignore. Okay, so let's shift gears. Lens 3, audience alignment. Framing the audience as simple-minded if they believe the other side. Well, it limits your reach to only people who already agree with you.
This is such a common trap, especially for passionate commentators. I mean, the narrator says, is it because so many people are simple-minded? I reckon they are. And then tells them to wake the hell up?
It might feel good to say, but is it persuasive?
Not at all. Imagine I'm a skeptic. Maybe I saw the opponent's video and thought, that photo point was a bit weird. So I come to this video for the counter-argument.
And the first thing you hear is, you're simple-minded for believing that.
Right. I'm immediately on the defensive. The door is slammed shut before I've even had a chance to step inside.
You're alienating the exact people you should be trying to persuade.
You're preaching to the choir and locking out the congregation. You're telling people they're stupid for having questions, and that is the fastest way to get them to stop listening.
So the suggestion is to use what some people call strategic empathy, or steelman it. You have to validate why someone might be confused before you correct them.
Strategic empathy, yeah, it's really just good communication. It's about lowering their defenses.
Meeting the audience where they are. So let's look at a concrete example of how to do that.
Okay, take the photo on the floor theory. Instead of just insulting viewers for falling for it, the narrator could say something like, it's easy to look at a stage studio and think a child doesn't belong there. On the surface, a photo on the floor does look out of place.
So you validate that initial confusion. You say, I see why you would think that.
Exactly. And then, once you have them nodding along, you pivot. However, we have to remember the context here. For a grieving child, that room isn't a studio. It represents their father's present. Moving a photo down to their eye level is a profound act of connection, not a conspiracy.
That is so much more persuasive. You're not calling the viewer stupid. You're giving them new information, the context of grief that totally changes their perspective.
You're inviting them to see it through your eyes. And you can do the same thing with the PR retainer point.
Right.
Instead of just mocking people, ask them to consider the logic. Say something like, if the subject truly believes the organization is corrupt, why would they simultaneously ask that same organization for a monthly consulting fee? I just ask you to look at that contradiction.
You're guiding the audience to think, not telling them what to think.
And people want to come to their own conclusions. If you lead them to the water, they'll drink. If you try to force their head under, well, they'll drown you.
Well said. Okay, let's move to our fourth and final point. This is about clarity and evidence, specifically with that really complex Scientology narrative.
Ah, yes.
The bottom line is that these complex he said, she said stories involving third parties, they need precise explanation to be followable.
This was easily the hardest segment of the whole piece to follow. You've got John Min, Charlie Kirk, accusations of astral projection, third eyes, funneling fans.
It's just a blur of accusations.
It is. The delivery is frantic, and the narrator conflates everything. The subject's tweets, John Min's comments, the narrator's own past warnings, without clearly separating who said what and when.
I found myself asking, wait, who is John Min again? Is he the Scientologist? Or is Charlie? Who is accusing who?
Exactly. And if we're confused, the audience is definitely confused. The weakness is the assumption that everyone listening already knows the whole backstory with John Min. Most people don't.
So the suggestion here is to slow down for this specific segment and use a really clear, claim versus reality format.
Structure is the antidote to confusion. You have to separate the players and label the information.
So a concrete example would be,
Be explicit. Don't just rant. Say it clearly. The subject claims Charlie Kirk practiced Scientology. The reality, this claim originated from John Min, a financial backer the subject had previously defended. You draw that line.
instantly clarifies the source of the rumor.
And you have to clean up the language. The script says John Min, who has a massive hard-on for Kenny Owens.
Which just lowers the tone again. It sounds like gossip, not analysis.
It does. Remove it. Keep the focus on the financial and ideological contradiction. The strongest point is the irony. Just state it. It is ironic that the subject asked Kirk, a Scientologist, while being backed by a known Scientologist.
That's the winning argument right there.
It is. You don't need any innuendo or frantic pacing. You just need clear lines.
Absolutely. Just hold the lens steady for a moment and the hypocrisy reveals itself. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to highlight the real strengths of this piece. We've been critical, but there is a core here that is incredibly valuable.
Oh, for sure.
The narrator's protective instinct over the children, over Gigi and Erika, is palpable. It's powerful.
I agree completely. You can feel the loyalty. And I specifically want to call out the rebuttal about the photo on the floor.
Yes.
That argument that a child just wanting a picture of their dad is normal behavior, that was the strongest, most human moment of the entire piece. It cut right through all the political noise.
It anchors the whole defense in reality. It's a beautiful moment that, right now, just gets buried in the chaos.
It does. And that passion, that's an asset. We don't want the narrator to lose that fire. We just want them to channel it.
Right.
It needs to be a righteous defense, not a chaotic attack. If they can harness that emotion and put it behind that 3-chapter structure we discussed, ending with that photo story, this could be a devastatingly effective piece of commentary.
Well, that brings us to the end of this critique. Let's just quickly recap the main action items.
Okay.
First, strip away the dingbat and witch insults. Let the absurdity of the claim stand on its own. The facts are on your side.
Don't obscure them with name-calling.
Second, group the arguments into those thematic blocks. A chapter for parenting, a chapter for religion and money, and a final emotional chapter for the photo. Stop cycling randomly.
Build the case.
And finally, treat the audience as intelligent people you want to convince, not simpletons you need to scold. Use that strategic empathy to explain why something might look convincing and then dismantle it with context.
Makes sense.
We invite you to apply these structural changes, really rebuild the script with those 3 distinct chapters, and submit the revised work for a follow-up. We'd love to see how it evolves. Thank you for listening. Keep writing and keep improving.